welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. How you guys doing today? We're right here on Kerncast at 5 o'clock every Sunday. Last week we were a little bit absent, out of town, and had to upload a previous recording. But right now we are live. You can talk to us right now. You can post. You can all that stuff right now.
Yep. Feel free to jump on and say hello if you're watching. We like to hear from you. And we also welcome your questions. We want your questions because we do this show for you. So if you've got some questions for us, even if you think it's kind of a silly question, don't feel bad. Just go ahead and post it, and we'll give it our best shot.
Yeah, we can't wait to see your comments on there. Again, if you caught our show last week, of what we posted last week, this really is about your involvement. We really want you to be involved in what's going on, involved in the discussion. That is how this is going to catch on. That's the whole reason for this, the existence of this show, is to get your participation so that you're sharing, you're posting, and your thoughts are coming on here. We want to discuss your thoughts, not just ours. But I was out of town this week, this past week. For those of you who may not know, I am a pastor, part of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, or sometimes it's called the Foursquare Church. And once a year, Foursquare has an annual conference called Foursquare Connection. And we had about 4,000 Foursquare pastors from 87 different countries around the world come together in Seattle this year. It's in a different major city.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of Foursquare pastors, and this is the first time I was able to go as a pastor. It's the first time I went ever, but to go as a pastor, and just had an amazing time there of just what I would call hearing from God. And we had lunch on Friday, and in that discussion of what's happened, I thought, well, let's talk about this. What does it mean when someone hears God? What does it mean when I say that I'm hearing God? And what does it mean to an atheist to sit and watch his friend say he's hearing God? So Marshall's not ready exactly for this question. I have not prepped Marshall for this question, but it just came into my mind right now. So that's why I haven't prepped you for this question. But I would like if you could, I would like just an honest revelation to me. It won't hurt my feelings. What, maybe in that moment or not in that moment, what is it like for your friend to tell you that he hears God?
Yeah, I was afraid that's exactly what you're going to ask. I thought you were going to ask something like, do you think I'm crazy when I tell you I hear from God? And so I'm like, yes.
Yeah. But as my friend, what is it like to hear your friend say that he hears God? Was that too personal of a question?
No. Okay. It's a valid question, and I owe you an honest response.
You mean a valid answer?
A valid answer. I do. To me, it's a form of delusion.
Okay.
It pains me to say that to you because you're my buddy, and I don't want you to think that I think you're crazy. Right. Because in reality, I think we're all just a little bit crazy. You know, as it says in Alice in Wonderland, all the best people are mad. And we're all a little bit mad, including myself. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% sane by any means. So don't think that I am labeling you as some kind of a nut job or a basket case, because I don't believe that's the case. I also think it's very normal for people to kind of talk to themselves or to talk to what they perceive or have been conditioned to believe is a God or a spirit or an ancestor, what have you. But at the end of the day, what my knowledge tells me is that you are talking to yourself.
Okay.
And that is why when we go out into the world and people say they're talking to God, it so happens that God is always confirming their biases, their preconceived notions. That's why Muslims talk to Allah and they hear that, hey, it's okay to be ISIS, or it's okay to be... Not all Muslims are ISIS. I don't want to come across like that. But that religious movement would not be possible without some kind of delusional thinking. Whatever religion you may be, that's why we have this guy who last week is asking for $54 million for a jet airplane. I sincerely believe that he sincerely believes he was told by Jesus to ask for a $54 million jet airplane.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that's happening is it's originating in his own mind, and it's not originating from the other or from some outside source.
Gotcha.
But I believe this is pretty much actually a normal behavior. It's certainly very common. I don't think it makes you abnormal in any way. And I even think it can be useful and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we also have to be aware that it's originating from within our mind and that it's going to amplify our biases rather than give us objective information.
What about when it confirms something? Now, I don't mean that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean my mind confirming something that I think I heard from God from here, but when an outside source directly says something to me that they feel is from God. That's how this conversation began, in that I specifically, in going to this, I wanted to find some answers for myself, find some personal answers for myself, in going to a place where that's going to be surrounded by other Christians, all like-minded, worship. If you believe in the Spirit of God, if you believe in the Holy Spirit, it was an environment that was filled with the Holy Spirit, because there's 4,000 pastors there, all doing the same thing, all being part of the same thing. And I knew that believing in the Spirit, going there, that would be an opportunity for me to ask questions of God and be in an environment where I believe God could purely speak to me. So I went with some questions, that I had some personal questions about some things in my life, about some direction possibly in what's happening in my life, and what my calling is, and what I'm supposed to be. So I'm going, praying about this. I'm not telling anybody, hey, everybody, I'm praying to find out if God wants to do this or this in my life. I'm not telling that. I'm not even really telling my wife that. I'm just going. And while I'm there, in an environment that we would call, as a Christian, filled with the Spirit, I'm there, and one of the people that's in our group comes up to me and says, God wanted me to tell you this. And it's directly related to my question for God. And I'm like, wow, okay, I will remember that. And then an hour later, a different person coming to me and saying, God spoke to me and told me to tell you this. And it's the same exact thing that this other person told me, that was about what I have been praying about, that I have not told anybody. This person didn't talk to that person. They were sitting in two different places, literally on the same evening. This person came over, said something. This person came over, said something. They weren't sitting together or nothing. And then the next day, a stranger and his wife.
You talk to strangers? Didn't your mother teach you don't talk to strangers?
A stranger and his wife, who saw my wife and I during the worship service, followed us out because they had to tell us, God wanted me to tell you this about your life. And I didn't know who they were. They didn't know who I was. But it was the same thing. It wasn't confirmation bias in my mind. It wasn't me hearing something in my mind that confirmed something I already believed. It was people from outside, in an environment where we were all there for the same purpose, in that environment, to hear from God. 4,000 pastors all together with the same intent, in an environment where we're all focused on the same thing. And for 3 of these people to come to me on their own without me saying, hey, I am asking about this. Can you guys pray and see if God tells you anything? Just out of the blue, 3 people, one of them I've never met before in my life, comes and tells me the same thing about the decision I'm trying to make. This is something that happened. This is something I expected to happen. This is something I prayed to happen. And this is something that happened outside of my own actions.
You expected this to happen.
I expected to hear from God. I didn't know how, but I came there and said, God, I want to hear what you have to say to me about this part of my life.
So maybe you were primed for belief?
I absolutely primed for belief, but how does 3 different people tell me the same thing? How does 3 different people tell me the same thing?
So the third person was a stranger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other 2 people knew you.
Yes.
From here?
They knew me from here at the church. They served with me in different capacities, but they knew me. And I could see that maybe what they said could be something that they see in my life. And I can tell you that what they said was something that's visible in my life, that it's about. I'm trying to dance around this because I really can't get into specifics right now publicly with things that are going on. Maybe sometime I'll tell the rest of the story. But yes, I believe that the 2 people that knew me could see that my life is focused around this, and that what they said could be interpolated.
Interpreted?
Well, when you interpolate, like when you not interpretate where you're, but I think
extrapolate or take meaning from.
Yeah, like I thought the word interpolate because what it is, it's kind of like triangulate. Yeah, look it up. See if interpolate's actually a word. I want to know. Interpolate. Here he goes. He's looking it up. Is it
insert something of a different nature into something else?
Okay, yeah. So that's basically, it's almost like seeing an analogy. Interpolating is like seeing an analogy, I guess, would be like, I see this and I'm going to apply it to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see how they could get that and see this about my life and maybe say, maybe it should be this. So I can see how that is a possibility with the people who already knew me. But for both of them to come, it's not like it's a 50-50 thing. You know what I mean? It's not like for both of them to come to say the same thing. And then for someone outside of our group who doesn't know me. And then here's the thing. It turns out we all know the same people. Like these people who came to me, they told me everything and they said all this stuff and they said where they were from. And I said, oh, well, hey, one of our pastors just moved here a couple years ago from your city. And I said the name, like, oh yeah, we know that person. And as it turns out, they knew some of the people that I knew, which, you know.
What's the likelihood that all these people are talking and you're just the last to know?
If, you know, I would have to assume that they're lying to me. I would have to assume that they're lying to me because
which we're not going to do.
Right.
I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Because afterwards I asked them, did they talk to each other? And
okay, so you asked.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I said, did you? And in fact, here's the thing. I talked to because the other one went out of town even after this, so I haven't seen one of them. But I talked to the other one. I said, hey, this person said the same thing to me, and they said, yeah. Later on that night, I went to go sit with them, and saying, man, this da 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 da. And I told Scott this, and they're like, I told Scott the same thing at a different, and they discovered at the table that night afterwards that they had both said the same thing to me. So unless I'd have to assume that my close friends are lying to me, I would have to say, no, they're not talking to each other behind my back.
Well,
is that as vague as I could be without mentioning names and specifics? I mean, I got a different story to tell you that I can start doing names and specifics, and it's a story that you are part of. It's a story that you are observing yourself, because 5 years ago, God called me to leave the church that I was working at, and that He had something new for me, but that He would not tell me where it was I was supposed to go until I quit first. And I was telling you about that because I had just done it. I
thought you were crazy.
Yeah, I had just quit the church that I was at of 15 years. I was working there for 15 years, and God said, I have something new for you, but I won't show you what it is. I won't open that door until you close this one first. And so I quit. I had, seniority. I had, 4 weeks paid vacation, health care for all my kids, free schooling for all 3 of my kids. And I told you this is what God's doing. And what did I tell you? We had lunch that time, and I told you I was doing. You were shaking your head just like He's shaking his head right now. You're crazy. I go, yeah. But what did I tell you that day?
You told me you were going to do what you were thinking about doing.
And what else? I said watch.
Yeah. Watch.
I said watch me. And which brings me to this question that I asked you at lunch. How much evidence is enough evidence for you?
Well, there's an unlimited quantity of anecdotal evidence out there. It's not so much the quantity of evidence as what I feel is the quality of the evidence. Now, with regard to your experience, I can't explain that. I can't. I imagine it's a pretty high level of confirmation bias. It's impressive, I have to say. And it does make me think, because I have to think about that because I can't explain it away. It could be coincidental, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
And that's my question. Well, that's my question for you. Do you have a threshold? And if you don't have a threshold, then how can you honestly claim that you are willing to open your mind to evidence if you don't have a threshold of evidence?
Well, I'm looking for, I'm a big fan of the scientific method.
Yep.
And I enjoy epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, which is the philosophy of how do we know what we know? How do we know that we're not being tricked or fooled?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that you are correct? And I don't trust a whole lot. I don't even trust myself, my own ideas and my own thoughts, which is why everything from my social media to my friends and interactions, I like to keep people around me who disagree with me, who have a different worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which
part
is
of
a
that
good.
is
I'm going to interrupt, but that's a good idea for all of us. If we don't do that, we get into an echo chamber
Mhm.
of like-minded thinking, and we find ourselves not thinking anymore. So I just wanted to encourage you guys, do that. Sorry.
Yeah. Part of it is I just simply enjoy debate. I enjoy arguing with people.
You were
like
in you were in forensics and debate in high school, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and college.
And
So,
college. I probably
so
should
I-
have been, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was in band.
Oh my gosh. At least we were better than band.
Oh.
But anyway.
Oh. All my band friends out there, send him hate mail.
Bring it.
Stab him, Vicky. You know who you're talking about.
But anyway, I guess I'm gonna get stabbed by the band of all things.
Verbally stab him. You know what I was.
My
Sorry.
goodness, who's the pastor here, right? Anyway, little cough. Sorry,
You got water right there.
probably allergies. But anyway,
We're allowed water back on the tables again.
it's important to include people who disagree with your worldview so that you're challenged.
Yep.
And believe me, every week I have the temptation to go through and just delete people who really annoy me. There's 2 or 3 in particular who are very good at doing it. But I don't because I'm hoping that at some point they say something that actually impresses me or really makes me think or reevaluate a core belief. Because I want to be correct. I don't want to be wrong, Scott, because if I'm wrong, the stakes are pretty high. This warm room today, it's about 83 degrees inside this room, is just a mild reminder that if I am wrong about the whole God question, well, there's a consequence to being wrong. Right?
We came in here today and found that my AC was not running. It's set for 71. It's and it's not blowing, and it's 83. And so we got a fan over here. If you guys hear a little fan noise, it's because there's a fan over here. I'm on him. But yeah, this is kind of our sneaky way of saying, are you sure about your decisions, Marsh? I mean,
Right.
Hell is hot. I mean,
But anyway,
it's really nothing for me to be joking about.
I like to apply the scientific. It has to be real to be serious. I like to apply the scientific method to inquiry, and the scientific method. When people talk about science, they don't always understand it. They think that science is biology and astronomy, and botany and physics.
They think of
and
the sciences.
Right,
not
that's what
the
they think of,
process.
but they don't think of the process.
Yep.
And the scientific method is a method of rational inquiry, whereby we ask a question in a logical way, and the entire point of the scientific process is to eliminate personal biases. So we are eliminating what we want to be correct, and we are trying to focus on what is objectively true, meaning something that is true without the intervention of the human mind, something that if I were to wave a magic wand and eliminate all humanity, this statement would still be a true statement. The way that we do that is you ask some questions, you do some research, you formulate a hypothesis, which is a test, a question that you want to test. You develop an experiment, you test the hypothesis, and you get a result. Now, if the result is, let's say, in the affirmative, that your hypothesis is correct, then you go to the next stage, which is you then publish your results, usually in a peer-reviewed journal, which is a publication like a big, thick, heavy magazine that only other scientists and nerds read. And
Scientist nerds?
right? And
What does he have against band nerds and science nerds?
right?
Oh my gosh, I think there's some deep-rooted issues here, but go on.
Truth is, I'm a closet nerd. So
Closet?
yeah. So the fellow scientists, they read the journal. They think, well, that sounds interesting. Let's replicate the experiment. And they perform their own tests. And their entire exercise is focused on proving you wrong. And if they all repeat these experiments and none of them can prove you wrong, then all of a sudden your hypothesis can become, a conclusion. And that is added to the body of knowledge in science.
Now, you have mentioned this before, and so you have you have agreed to this before, and that is not everything can be measured through the scientific method.
Correct.
So what do you do for those things?
Can you give me an example? Because most things can be scientifically measured, but some things cannot be measured. And the goal of science is to measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not.
The feelings of your wife.
I don't think that's measurable.
No, I don't mean that as a slash to you or to her, but I'm saying, so what do you do with those? How do you deal with those? If you cannot, do you just ignore them? They don't exist? Your wife's feelings don't exist?
If love can be value, love can be quantified.
I'm not talking about love. I'm saying your wife's feelings in general. Your wife's feelings.
Well, feelings are widely varied. You have to narrow it down. That's too broad of a question to provide a specific answer.
Can it even be specific?
Do people have feelings? Yes, they do.
Can
we quantify feelings? We can. We could hook you up to an MRI machine or some sort of brain scanner, and we can actually measure the intensity of the brain waves when you are presented with certain stimuli. And they've done this before. They show people
but that's only showing
pictures or faces.
That's only showing that all that is showing is what part of your brain is activating.
Well, the intensity correlates directly with what the person reports. You know, so I have strong feelings of love and affection when I see this face, versus I have feelings of loathing or feelings of fear or mistrust when I see these other faces.
Okay, so how would you scientifically measure that?
Well, you would hook a person up and you would measure their brain waves. And you would show them a face and say, how do you feel?
Right,
and you
so
would find the correlation.
If somebody shows this person's face to this person, and it creates one feeling, but the same face will create a different feeling. So
right.
Across the two different people, that same stimuli creates two different feelings.
It might depend, right? You know, so if you show my face to somebody who knows me and loves me.
How can you make that repeatable? How can you say that this will always produce this feeling? How is that repeatable? How are you eliminating the variables when it is all subjective in the person's mind? How do you, I'm not talking about I'm not asking you how do you measure the brain response. I'm saying how do you quantify feelings? Not brain response, not brain activity. How do you quantify feelings? How do you measure feelings?
Well,
not brain
feelings
activity.
are going to be subjective because they're individual based.
Okay, right. So now we're talking about something that cannot be measured, repeatable by the scientific.
Well, no, you can repeat the experiment a dozen or 100 times even.
Right, you can repeat the
experiment. You can hook me up 100 times and conduct
and you
the same
might feel
experiment.
differently by the third time.
Not maybe, but not necessarily.
But you can.
Ceteris paribus, which is a fancy Latin phrase meaning all other things being equal. Basically, no, I would not expect a different result between experiment 1, 3, 10, 20, or 100. You should get roughly the same result every single time.
Right, but you can get a feeling about this. Again, the first time someone tastes caviar, they're going to hate it, but the 10th time they might grow to like it. So now that feeling has changed. So you can get the same measurement, you can get the same stimulus, but that person can now choose to feel a different way about it. So well, you might go back and repeat that experiment, and that person has changed.
Oh, you could say the same thing about wine or beer or certain kinds of music or romantic comedies,
that's
right?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's not measurable by the scientific method because
I don't know.
Change.
I bet you there's a scientific explanation for why people develop tastes.
Right.
I would bet you there is. I could even Google it right now. Go ahead. It's going to take a second. But
what I'm talking about is that you have told me, maybe since you have told me this, maybe I'll ask you, what are the things that you cannot measure scientifically? Because you have told me, you have conceded that before, that not everything can be measured through the scientific method.
The supernatural.
The supernatural.
God cannot be measured scientifically because you have an immediate problem with God, which is there are no units with which to quantify a God. How do you measure a God? Do you measure God in pounds or fluid ounces or
obviously you do it through the metric system.
Kelvins?
You do it through the metric system. You don't do it in pounds.
So, I mean, how do you measure the supernatural? And that's one of the things that you cannot quantify. If something exists in the natural world, you should be able to develop a measurement for it. Now, there are things for which we do not yet have the tools or the technology.
Fine. How about truth?
Well, truth is generally subjective. It depends, what kind of a truth question are you asking?
Just truth in general, not absolute truth, but just truth in general.
I don't even think science itself can give you absolute truth with a capital T. If you mean 100% factually true.
That's one thing. But I'm just saying in general truth. Even a lie detector test is only measuring whether or not that person believes what they're saying, not whether or not what they're saying is true. So what do you do? How do you, Marshall, deal with truth? How do you deal with the relationships in your life when someone tells you something? How do you determine if it's true? Do you use the scientific method and measure it and repeat it and ask somebody and then document it and then ask somebody else, ask this person the same question, and do you use the scientific method to determine if someone's telling you the truth?
It's really rough on relationships, I got to tell you.
Come on.
No. With big questions, that really, like if I'm thinking about global warming or Big Bang or evolution, we use scientific method for that. When it's an interpersonal relationship, for example, is Scott my friend? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Now, I have not submitted you to a peer-reviewed journal to determine whether or not you're my friend. I have not asked any scientists to do any research. And I don't have any units of measurement for which to quantify whether or not you are my friend. The way I evaluate that question is by experience. I guess I like to borrow from the Christian Bible, where it says, by their fruits ye shall know them.
Okay.
If you treat me kindly, if you hang out with me outside of work, if we go to lunch, if we enjoy each other's company, then I'm going to detect that, and I'm going to conclude in my mind, this person must be my friend, because it's evident based on how you treat me. By your fruits I know you.
What if this whole time, your whole life, you've been on the Truman Show? My kids just watched the Truman Show.
I haven't seen it, so you're going to have to clue me in.
You have not seen he has not seen the Truman Show.
No, I don't get out much. I don't watch much
1998.
TV.
What do you mean you don't get out much? 1998. Jim Carrey, the guy finds out he's 30 years old, and he finds out that all his life he's been the subject of a TV show, and everybody around him's an actor.
Wow.
And there's literally a scene where his best friend is talking to him and saying if everybody had to be in on it, because he's starting to think that something's up, and his best friend is looking at him and crying and saying if everyone was in on it, then I'd have to be on it, and I'm not in on it. And he's telling him that, and Truman's like, okay, yeah, you're my best friend forever. What if I've been an actor lying to you the entire 20 years of our life? What would be
I would hope you'd be driving a nicer car.
Well, I do outside of this world. This is a fake world, and outside of that world, when you don't see me, I am driving that Ferrari.
René Descartes, the French philosopher, I think he was French, pretty sure, kind of asked a similar question. He's like, how do I know what I know? What's the one thing I can distill my knowledge down to so that I know this one thing with absolute certainty? What can I know with absolute certainty?
Yep.
He said, it is possible I could be a brain in a vat, right? How do I know that I'm not being tricked by the devil or by some other experience? How do I know I'm not like an insect and I'm hallucinating or dreaming, what have you? And the only thing he could conclude without debate is cognito ergo sum, which is Latin meaning I think, therefore I am.
Yep.
If I am thinking, obviously I must exist.
I learned it as cogito ergo sum, but anyway.
Well, your Latin is probably better than mine, but you cannot.
Hey, somebody respond to us. Tell us who pronounced it right. Josh just told you need to see the Truman Show.
Well,
Thank you, Josh Henderson.
Thank you.
We have it at my house. You want to come over and watch it?
Awesome. So basically, the only thing I can conclude is that if I'm thinking I exist, beyond that, there will always be a measure of doubt or skepticism. There will never be 100% knowledge. That's why in science, even gravity is called a theory.
Yep.
And that's what we mean by theory. By theory,
a scientific theory is not a
guess,
guys. It's not a guess. It's not a. I understand the importance and real.
Yeah, I'm not going to test the
Determinism.
theory of gravity by jumping off a building.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we know. Nonetheless, even in science, the scientific method acknowledges it, tips its hat to philosophy, and says it is possible. There is the tiniest shred of doubt, the tiniest possibility that we could be wrong. And there's also, I think it's Hume's problem from induction, which basically explains that we can never be 100% certain of anything.
So to bring this back and to bring this around without going into a logical fallacy, but still, I'm gonna border on one. I'm gonna border on one.
Okay.
Again, based on the idea that you know me,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mhm.
believe that I'm your friend, right? And because of your experience with me,
Correct.
even though it cannot be proved, you cannot scientifically prove it. You accept.
I guess I could hook you up to a machine, but
Yeah,
that would involve, kidnapping and
Yeah.
a couple felonies.
But you accept that I'm your friend,
Yes,
even though you cannot run the scientific method on it.
correct. I can't do the science.
So why can't you give the same level of belief to God? Why? Because outside of, well, I cannot scientifically prove that God even exists. Why would I give him a level of belief? But you already defined that God is not provable in the scientific method. There's no measurement. There's no unit that we've discovered yet. So outside of that, why, if you've seen my experiences, if you've been around me and you're seeing my life, and I am displaying, not only am I displaying my friendship for you, that you find acceptable levels of belief, you believe that I'm your friend. What is stopping you from believing that my experiences with God have the same credibility to you? What is the difference, and why can't you why do you accept one thing from me but you don't accept the other thing from me? And by not accepting, by claiming to say I accept you as a friend, but I don't accept your belief as being real, it's actually could possibly be throwing the friendship into question as well, even though it's not. I'm not saying that I won't be your friend.
Two ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you accept your experience with me as acceptable level of belief, but you don't accept my experience with God as an acceptable level of belief enough to even try it or consider it. Or so the fallacy that I was going to is, what would it hurt to believe?
Well, a lot of people.
What would it hurt for you to accept what I believe?
Well, now you're getting into multiple questions there.
Okay.
A lot of people have the same level of faith and confidence in their religion, and some of those people turn out to be suicide bombers.
And you've met them. This is what I'm getting at. I understand that argument, but what I'm getting at, you've met them, you're friends with them?
No,
you are
they're
friends
gone.
with me. But you are friends with me, and you have met me.
I have met you.
So
I have not met God. I have not met Jesus.
Right, but that's not the argument you're saying. You're saying the argument, well, a lot of people make this claim that they believe this and they're wrong. But I'm saying I'm in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your threshold?
You're real, man.
Yeah,
you're
but
real.
I'm saying,
God, hello, God, I can't.
What is your threshold in accepting? If you can easily throw out and say, well, there's all these people who believe that, but you don't know them. You're not friends with them. You're not with them all the time. You're not seeing them live that life like you're seeing me live the life that I claim. What is the threshold? What is the threshold that would get you to believe?
Mm-hmm.
And what would it hurt if you were wrong? What is keeping you from defining a threshold and accepting it? What is the fear? Is it simply the fear of being wrong? Because you're not afraid of being wrong about my friendship.
Mm-hmm.
These are deep questions I know I'm asking, and right now a valid answer, honestly, I would accept is I don't know, and I don't know that I'm comfortable having this conversation right now. That would be a valid answer right now, because I don't want to put you, I just want you to think about those questions. You don't even have to answer that question right now. I don't want you to feel the pressure of answering that question right now. All right?
Well,
if it is even pressure, I'm just saying, I want you to, I'm presenting the questions for you and our audience to think about.
let me flip the script on you and ask you, what would be your threshold for atheism?
How do you mean?
Why not become a non-believer? What would your threshold for non-belief be? At what point would it be demonstrated to you that God does not exist?
I think right now, honestly, I would have to say there is no threshold because of my experience.
And for right now, off the cuff, that's probably
I have experienced
my answer
too much.
too.
I have experienced too much. I've experienced too much in my life
Mm-hmm.
directly with God. This is why.
Mhm.
This is why I feel the question is slightly
So
not
zero
equal.
zero risk of atheism on your part.
Zero
Just
risk
not
of
gonna
atheism
happen.
because of the experience I have experienced.
What about a risk of another religion? I mean, what if you find out it's Allah?
I know that there's a lot of spiritual people
Mm-hmm.
who
It could be Krishna. I really like Har Krishna, by the way. I really do. I'm being dead serious.
gotcha. So it's hard to tell
I-
sometimes.
No, I'm being dead serious. I really like that theology.
Mhm.
I really do.
I
They
think the
seem very
difference.
in
I think
tune
the
with
difference.
reality.
I think the difference in the
Believe
question,
it or not. Very. I mean, it's very metaphysical or what
Yeah.
have you. Very a lot of mysticism. But I've been happy to hear some of what they have to say.
and I hope I'm not deflecting right now because it's good. I want to have these questions, but
Mhm.
I feel the difference in the question is I have experienced something with God
Mm-hmm.
that you have not.
Mm-hmm.
So my plethora of experience
Mm-hmm.
brings my threshold of disbelief way down.
Mm-hmm.
With the question I'm asking you is, you don't have that experience,
Mm-hmm.
but do you trust someone who has to guide you into having that experience yourself?
Well, we're dealing with competing core beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's super uncomfortable to challenge core beliefs. It's really, really hard. And psychologically, the brain is literally going to exclude even the best evidence that's presented to you.
Yeah.
Which is why it's important to have competing ideas in your social networks. It's important for me to be challenged in this way and to be asked this question. It's important for me to do the same to you. It gets us thinking. It's certainly a question I'll be thinking about in the days to come. For me, the heart of the matter is, why have you had these experiences and I have not? Were you primed for these experiences from birth?
That's a good question.
And perhaps I was primed by my life experiences to not be a believer.
It would seem that you were primed to be a believer.
Maybe, but ultimately I became a non-believer. But what would happen? What would you be? Would you be a Christian if you were born in the heart of the Islamic world? Would you be a Christian if you were born in the heart of India?
That question. There's a question on there. We're gonna get to Josh. We're gonna get to your question in just a second. Let me answer yours real quick, or at least address the question that you're having. That question comes from the idea that has not happened, which it has. There are Christians who have discovered Christ in Islam, not through the testimony of another person, not through the conversion of being somewhere. There are people in India, these stories exist. I don't personally know them. So again, these are going to be anecdotal, but that does happen. Now, the fact that it does happen, I don't know if that negates even your question or not.
Well, no, because the vast majority of people tend to follow the religion based on where
Yeah.
they're born. If you had been born in the world of the ancient Vikings, you would be a follower of Norse paganism.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. There is nobody who became a Christian before Jesus came to be.
That's because
right.
Christian is based
Didn't exist.
on
Right.
Christ. Yeah,
Right.
It
But nobody became Muslim before Muhammad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So had you been born in ancient Greece, you'd be a believer in the Greek gods.
But even ancient Greece doesn't predate creation.
Okay, so
I
I don't understand where you're going with that.
Well, even anyway, it was just
Okay.
based. It was just the Islam didn't exist here, Christianity, but even both of those religions agree on creation and both agree on Abraham and Moses and all the way back through there. So even both of those, even though there weren't Muslims before Muhammad, there was the basis of their belief still goes back before the basis of other beliefs. But Josh Gunderson has a question, or at least a comment. There are theories that Krishna is actually Christ. In India, Christ went to India in the years missing from the biblical story. I'm assuming you're talking about the years between when he was 12 and when he was 30 when he started his ministry. That's actually an interesting one I've never heard of before. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Tell me a little bit about that. We got just
I haven't heard a lot. I've just heard that that's one of the possibilities that Christ traveled other parts of the world and sort of became the figure which has been interpreted in other religions as their savior or their leader or founder, what have you. So there's also evidence, or it's been suggested, that the teachings of Buddhism were carried to the Holy Land, which, by the way, was an international crossroads.
Yes.
It was part
by
of
naturally where it is, Jerusalem right there, and is just a crossroad from Africa and India.
So there could have been
Europe
Buddhists in Jerusalem who could have influenced Jesus, for example. So
interesting. We're coming up to a close. I feel this has been a great, one of our more calm and non-aggressive discussions. I don't know if that makes it more or less exciting for you guys to see us agree and get along, or to see us almost go to fists. But I've really enjoyed this one. I guess I'll have to. No, I shared a little bit of the others. I shared both stories. I wanted to get both of those stories out there. Josh, thanks for participating with us today.
Josh.
We want to ask everybody, hey, send in those questions. We want to be able to talk and discuss these things even afterwards. You can always send us an email at validanswer@gmail.com. Comment on the broadcast, and I'm gonna give you last word today. Just keep it like a minute or so.
Oh, I don't know if I want it. 'Cause I want to stop and think. I think that I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about. At what level do my opinions change, and at what level do my opinions change or my beliefs change when they're not being informed by scientific method or reason? And so one of my problems with all religion is that none of it passes the logic test, in terms of you cannot prove to me that a specific religion is correct without at some point committing a logical fallacy. You could make the argument that maybe a God exists. There's ground to do that within the boundaries of logic. But when that God becomes a very specific deity with very specific teachings and instructions and so on, and it's actually regulating what you eat and put inside your body and how you behave and what you do, in detail. To me, that gets beyond the realms of logical belief. So that's one of the big reasons why I don't quite believe in the claims of religion. All religion is based on personal revelation, and I have a hard time with accepting personal revelation, even when that revelation comes from a friend. So in order for me to believe, I'm probably going to have a pretty intense experience that I cannot explain away through any other means. It would probably have to be an experience which I can comprehend through logic and reason.
Okay.
But it would have to be pretty substantial. Just like for you, I think it would have to be a pretty substantial experience to change your mind.
Yeah.
So again, it's a core belief. So
I just make one call out to all of my friends: pray that he has an experience.
Well, that's a positive one.
Yes,
but yeah,
absolutely.
That's scary.
Yeah. No. Wait. So, I'm sorry. So you believe that their prayers could come true? That's why you're scared?
Well, it's possible, right?
Okay. We are making breakthroughs here on A Valid Answer. That's my hidden agenda. Not so hidden, right?
Right.
Hey, this has been A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall, where a pastor and an atheist discuss philosophy, religion, politics, all those things that affect our lives. And we really appreciate you being here. We're on 5 o'clock every Sunday night on kerncast.com, and get a hold of us at avalidanswer@gmail.com. Until then,
good night and thank you.
Good night and God bless.